From the pages of MikeHuckabee.com, the one-stop shop for my columns and all the news that you need, let's take a little look back at the stories that made up the week that was. And of course, you can always get those stories and my commentary beamed directly into your email inbox twice a day, and it's always absolutely free, all at MikeHuckabee.com. Vladimir Putin continued his horrific assault on Ukraine. And I'd first like to extend my sympathies and prayers to the families of Fox News cameraman Pierre Zakrzewski and his colleague, Ukrainian journalist Sasha Kushanova. I want to get that right. Both of them were killed when they were struck by incoming fire just outside of Kyiv. Fox News correspondent Benjamin Hall was also injured in the attack, but he's been safely evacuated and is expected to recover. Benjamin Hall, a first-class journalist. We pray for his full recovery. Putin's ratcheting up those despicable attacks on civilians, including bombing a theater in Mariupol that was being used as a shelter for hundreds of civilians, and plainly labeled on the outside with the Ukrainian word for children. The death toll there, still unknown. And Putin's forces continue to push further into the country, attacking airplane and bus repair facilities near Lviv's International Airport just this morning. President Joe Biden called Vladimir Putin a war criminal on Wednesday, prompting the Kremlin to respond that such a characterization was unacceptable and unforgivable. This happened a day after the U.S. Senate unanimously passed a resolution condemning Vladimir Putin as a war criminal, a rare show of unity in the deeply divided Congress. In this case, though, war criminal is a rather toothless term if the alleged criminal recognizes no authority to enforce the law against him. I sure do miss the good old days when the media were telling us that if Donald Trump got elected, he'd start World War III. And I could rest easy knowing that was just plain partisan nonsense. But it looks like we might be getting there now, are on the cusp, as our government risks deeper involvement in the war. Now the administration has so far ruled out a U.S. enforced no-fly zone, but the billion-dollar question is, what will it actually take to stop Vladimir Putin? Next week, Joe Biden plans to travel to Brussels for a session of NATO leaders where he hopes to demonstrate Western unity. But does anyone at this point trust the United States to solve the Putin problem? I'm not sure I'd trust this president with car keys based on his unwillingness to answer unscripted questions or to be able to introduce members of his staff without notes, including when he this week confused the vice president with the first lady. Elsewhere in the not really news, President Biden continued making public statements that had people again calling for him to take a cognitive test. And these were words that weren't just word salad, they were a whole word salad bar. The weirdest might have been when he started talking about how people try to blackmail their exes with naked photos.
But he knows somebody somewhere along the line that in an intimate relationship, what happened was the guy takes a revealing picture of his naked friend or whatever in a compromising position, and then literally, in a sense, blackmails or mortifies that person.
So, seriously, everybody knows someone who's done that? Now, I can only assume that he was alluding to his son Hunter's so-called laptop from hell, which, by the way, the New York Times finally admitted is real. The New York Post, the paper that broke the story ahead of the 2020 election, got banned from Twitter for saying that very thing. It's real. The emails are real. The pictures are real. But here is White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki punting, as usual, when she was asked about it this week.
And if I may, you asked about Hunter Biden's laptop. You also, in October 2020, dismissed it as Russian disinformation. Do you stand by that assessment?
Again, I'd point you to the Department of Justice and Hunter Biden's representatives. I'm a spokesperson for the United States. He doesn't work for the United States.
Okay, that was about a real non-answer right there, right? Well, from Russian disinformation to confirmed real by the New York Times in just over a year, imagine if the social media networks hadn't actively worked to suppress that story. What a difference it might have made that the son of the former vice president was leveraging his dad's power to profit from foreign influence. A recent poll taken by Rasmussen showed that a majority of voters think the Hunter Biden story was buried by the media and big tech. And some of those same voters say it would have affected their vote if they had known about it. Finally, President Biden wished us a happy St. Patrick's Day this week. Well, not really, because here's what he actually said.
I may be Irish, but I'm not stupid.
I'm trying to figure out what he meant by that. I'm Irish, but I'm not stupid. I hope you're not suggesting that the Irish people are stupid, because if you are suggesting that, you are really in some deep water with all the Irish Americans out there, and even all the people who like the Irish Americans, which I'd like to think are most of us. One Twitter user asked, "Can I get a fact check on that?" Maybe the New York Times can be of some help. I'm sure they can, and I'm sure they will. Well, until next time, these have been the facts of the matter. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, then subscribe, and hit the notification bell below. Now, if you didn't like it, you ought to find a Ben Shapiro video to detox you with more facts.